Hello everybody, it's time for the panel. And tonight we have literally an all-star cast. We have Sue Bailey, Peter Jane and Claud Williams. And we're gonna introduce each other one at a time. So please, Sue.
Hi everybody, my name's Sue Bailey. I run a marketing company in the Midlands. Just to give you a little bit of history about myself, I've always been in public relations since I left university many years ago. I took 10 years maternity. I went back to the company in 2001, loved it so much that I bought it in 2005. It was actually a failing business when I took it on. So just going back from what everybody has said earlier on this morning in the sessions, it is all about taking a risk, about passion and believing in what you're doing and just going for it, really. So really pleased to be here.
Peter.
Hi, my name's Peter. Graduate here in 2002. That makes me feel really old. In sports science, I run a tech startup in London called Shopper.com. It's my second startup, and yeah, things are going well. European Startup of the Year last year, so failed a lot. So I know a lot about failing. So happy to be here.
Claude.
My name is Claud Williams. I guess you could call me something like a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 17 years old, and I'm also a Loughborough graduate, graduated in 2012. Now I own 3 companies. One is a media production business, with Loughborough University being my biggest client. I also own a business consultancy, and I'm just about to start a social enterprise called Dream Nation.
Well, thank you. And the thing is, the first question which I really want to get into is just, how do you define failure? What is failure for all of you guys? Because you all come from quite really different backgrounds. So just beginning with you, Sue, like failure, what is it to you? What does it mean?
I think the word failure in general terms is very negative. And it's something that we all fear, to be honest, isn't it? We fear failure. And I think it is very important that we actually learn from it, and we don't fear it. And we learn from it and we move on. When I took over my company, it was in huge debt. It was a failing business, and it was a massive risk for me. And it was something that I needed to think very carefully about when I took it on.
Like, and how much debt was it in?
It was in £200,000 of debt.
£200,000 in debt, and you took it over?
And I took it on. And it was a risk. I'd also been offered another job where there was a lot of money involved. But actually, I decided that I wanted to have a go. I knew that I could turn the company around and just went for it. And great people working for me. And I didn't want to let them down. And I think it is all about people as well. If you respect the people around you and embrace them, look at their skills, and just go for it. And the one thing that I would say today that I am disappointed about is that there's no other women. Where are all the other women? Come on, girls. If you really, really want something, take the knocks on the way and just go for it. It's great. Be passionate. Don't be money-driven, is what I would say. Be passion-driven and take the knocks, learn from them, and just go for it. Be nice people.
So for you, failure is being money-driven instead of being passion-driven?
I think what happened with the business that I took on from the previous owner, he had become too greedy, was taking too much money out of the company, and that was what was causing it to fail. And he actually did me a favour, because in taking over a business where there is very little money in it, and our cash flow was a nightmare, it makes you think about every single penny. And it's a really good lesson to learn, to the extent where we needed a new fridge. So we actually went down to Iceland and we bought it back down the high street ourselves because we couldn't afford to have it delivered. So, it is about passion, about having determination. So just, don't give up.
So Peter, failure, what is it to you? How do you define it?
being in a tech startup, it's really, really fast paced. So in effect, the code that you put out live has to be then tested and brought back. And if it doesn't work, you have to redo things again. And so I think if you internalized every single feature that you put out live, you'd struggle daily with, emotionally you'd struggle. So I've learned over the last sort of 4 or 5 years just to not internalize it at all. If something doesn't work, you bring it back, you revert it, and then you push it back out something else. So it's, I do it we do it back in London on a daily basis. So for me, you have to fail in order to progress. If you're doing something novel, in effect, failure is inevitable. Yeah, you can, and some of those problems with some early business plans that you start, I think if people are so held on to what their belief is that where this business will go, they're really going to struggle, because until it's live, you don't know anything. If you think it's a certain way, it's definitely going to work, and then 100% of people who visit your site tell you in real time it's not working, you need to pull it back. So yeah, it's something I've just learned not to really worry about.
So you recommend that we should all fail forward? Pretty
much. I mean, pretty much. You can take an educated guess on what you think will work, and then and get some clever people around you who give you some guidance. But ultimately, it's anything novel needs to be challenged, and it will fail. And if you just take that on the chin and say, look, 99% of what we put out there will fail, then it's when you distance yourself from that emotionally, it's actually not too bad.
So not taking it personally, just accepting it for what it is.
Exactly. I mean, if you do internalize it, you struggle with it, and you don't push out an updated version of the code that then ultimately works. And so it's if you don't internalize it, I think you don't really have a problem with it.
That's very good thinking, actually. Claude, failure.
To begin with, I'm going to apologise because I tend to speak in sound bites sometimes, especially right now because I'm doing a project where I'm going through a lot of quotes to post on social media platforms. And so I'm going to give you a quote from Henry Ford, and he said, "Failure is the opportunity to start again, but more intelligently." So basically, the way that we should all be looking at failure is don't look at it as the end of the road, but see it as just part of the route to being successful in the first place. Because if you don't fail at anything, you're not going to learn any new lessons. So it also means if you're not failing at anything, you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So look at failure as something that's positive as opposed to something that's negative.
So for you, failure is an opportunity to push yourself out of your comfort zone.
I don't think it's an opportunity. I think it means that you are pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, because if you're comfortable with anything that you're doing, then you're not going to fail. Like, for example, I imagine most of us here are pretty confident at, say, walking, so you're not likely to fail walking one day. But if I try to do something like maybe triple jump one day, I don't know how to triple jump, so I'm likely to continue to fail until I learn how to do it properly.
That's interesting opinions, how they all sort of vary in terms of what failure means to you. Now, the question I really want to ask, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are wondering, is failure in society is not really something that's quite positive. How do you think we can sort of challenge the perception, especially here in the UK, of what failure actually is? Who wants to take this question on? Or just chime in whenever you want.
I think events like this are very positive. And the more events and the more this sort of discussion goes out, then obviously that will help to change the way people think, which is what we need to be doing. And I think, education is important as well, and that needs to come right from day one. And it will happen. I think people will become more aware that actually failure is not necessarily a bad thing. And that we learn from it, and it's about making sure that there is a positive around it. So events like this, and the fact that social media and the way in which we communicate these days, things spread very quickly. So there's an opportunity for us to change.
I think it's quite a British thing, actually, the negative scene. I spent I was just in California, and we actually went to a failure party. So the VC that was running it invited all the companies that they had backed that had failed to this party. And it was the most bizarre thing being British. He said, well, normally I think you'd be shunned or you'd be too embarrassed to turn up and say, yeah, I failed. But Americans just, I think for them everybody said, like, these guys actually took a risk and did something, and half of the room who had failed had already moved on to the next thing. And I think that's a British mentality we need to change, really.
Then how do you think is that we can do that? How can we change something that's so core, like in the ethos of being in Britain?
It's an evolution, really. The more successful entrepreneurs there are, and the more it's sort of championed within the press and everything, that they realise that, okay, I may have failed on this one, but ultimately I'm going to get there. Look at X, Y, and Z who have done exactly the same thing. And I think they do champion entrepreneurs a lot better over there than here. My grandmother still thinks I'm unemployed.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because I went out of university, did an internship, then jumped into my own business, and for her that was just the weirdest thing ever.
That's a crazy cultural
I didn't work
shift.
at a bank or something like that.
Now, Claude, you own like a creative company, and you also have your own event called Dream Nation. So you like really want to change the perception of failure in itself. Like, how do you think we can like enhance that? How can we push it further so we can get there like quicker and be happier?
I think it definitely is doing more things like this, and as entrepreneurs or whatever your passion is just literally finding a support network of other people that are doing similar things, other people that are dreaming big, or other people that are really pushing themselves forward, because there's actually no doubt, if you talk to anyone that has been successful, then they have definitely failed, and they've failed multiple times, and it's just normal. So the more people around you which are trying to do something a bit out of the box, then you'll begin to realize that is normal, and you can support each other through your failures, as well as learning lessons from other people's failures as well. I mean, if you was to read the book or autobiography of any successful person on this planet, there's going to be a series of failures that led to their success eventually. So I think it's more just talking about it more and being more open about what failures that we go through.
That's great. Talking about being more open about failures. I'm wondering, when was the first time in your life you realized that, wow, failure can actually be good? Like, at what point did you have to hit to realize failure can be something that can push me forward? Because I don't believe we're all born to love failure. It's something that we like learn one day and just suddenly clicks. Like, Peter, when was it for you, that moment, that eureka moment, like failure? That's amazing.
Well, my first business failed pretty catastrophically. And it was, not a sob story or anything, but 40 grand in debt. I'd wasted, a year and a half on a particular project that didn't really take off. And when you hit rock bottom and you realise that life, nothing really changed, the people who loved me still loved me, still had the same friends, and yeah, it was just, this is actually not too bad. You just pick yourself up and try again, basically. It was, I knew that the bottom isn't that bad. It generally isn't. As long as you get up again.
As long as you get back up. Claude, when was it for you hitting like rock bottom and seeing failure is good?
Yeah, for me, my first major failure in my life has got nothing to do with business at all. When I was about 14 years old, basketball was my entire life, and that's all I cared about. I did want to eventually go on to be a basketball professional player and all of that, but at the same time, I wasn't actually all that great. So
there's quite a lot of love for grads who think that.
So so for us, my basketball team, we'd actually made it to the county finals for our basketball tournament in London, and at this point, our team was pretty cool. I wasn't even in the starting five. I was warming the bench, as they call it. And yeah, in the final match, our team got completely annihilated by this team, by our opponents rather. And for me, I remember sitting on the coach on the way home with the rest of my teammates, and none of us could look each other in the eyes. Like, in fact, some of our teammates were even crying and stuff, which was quite emotional. And I said to myself, I'm never going to let this happen again. Like, that was the moment I said, I can't see myself in the situation ever happening again. And from that day, I went home and I started training. Like, literally, I'd got my basketball out and started working on my shooting, started working on my ball control. And these were things that I never used to do before. I just assumed that I was going to get better just by, I don't know what my assumption was before, in all honesty. So I spent the entire summer training, and by the time we came back to the next year, for the next academic year rather, I was one of the better players on the team. I wasn't the best player yet, but I was one of the better players. And we went that entire season undefeated. In fact, we went for 3 years without losing a match. And the way that I now look at it, now that I've got a bit of hindsight behind me, was that if we didn't go through that failure of knowing what it was like to be at the bottom, then I wouldn't have had the determination to improve the way that I treated basketball, and the way that my view towards things like training and so on and so forth. So failing in that basketball match in that tournament was what taught me the importance of using failure as an opportunity to improve.
That's interesting. It always seems to be like whenever you have to hit rock bottom to actually see how great failure can be. It's going to be pretty daunting to a lot of people. Like Sue, you took over like a pretty crazy company. Like when was the first time like for you hit rock bottom and realized that, wow, there's a way out. Why I failed, I can learn from it now.
I think for me, when I was, because I'd handed my notice in at the company, I was leaving, and I was called into the owner of the company's office, and I thought he was going to tell me to clear my desk and get out, but he didn't. He offered me the job of managing director, and I'd got a young family. And it was a very nerve-wracking experience. And I went home and I just walked up and down the garden and I just thought about what I wanted and whether I wanted to take this on, because I knew that it was a massive, massive thing to try and take on. I'd got no real business experience, but I'd got common sense and I'd got drive. And I thought, I've got to give it a go, because if I don't, then all these people that work, and there was 12 people then, back in those days, in the company, they would be without a job. So part of what inspired me to have a go, and it was about having a go, was all the other people in the company, who are great people, and a lot of them are still there today. And you just have to have faith and have a go, basically, I think, and just believe in yourself. And if you do make mistakes, and it's not gone swimmingly every single day since I took it on, there's been challenges to face, and you just go for it, really.
Just having a go and just going.
Have a go. Have a go. If you don't have a go, you'll never know.
That's a good rhyme.
Yeah.
You can quote that and send a tweet. Have a go. You will never know. Sue Bailey. You can get your phones out now. Now, the thing is, I'm wondering, all three of you are three different people, three different companies, three different experiences. Now, all of you must handle failure differently. It's like, do you guys have a certain ritual for when you fail? You say, okay, I failed now, time to do my rain dance, or perhaps something along those lines. Like Claude, when you fail, what do you do? What are the specific steps you do? Do you drink water, or just, what is it? I'm guessing you drink water. Other than eating and drinking and sleeping, what else do you do?
Well, funny enough, actually, I think when I first started failing, or before I kind of realised how important failing was in the business context, I think I just sulked, in all honesty, kind of locked myself away and not talk to anybody. But now, what I now do is I started writing a journal, actually, about a year ago. And I have to say, for me personally, that's been one of the biggest transformations for my business, because it means that after anything happens, I force myself to sit down and analyze the situation. So I force myself to write down what lessons did I learn from it, what are the goods, what is the bads, how do I stop this from happening again in the future, and what steps do I need to take next. So now, whenever I fail, or even when I succeed, in all honesty, I will take the time out to make sure I write about it, and that helps me process everything.
Taking a journal, that can be quite useful. Now, Peter, you used to play rugby, so when you fail, what do you do? A long time ago. I almost how long? But what do you do when you fail?
Well, from a startup context, I think previously, we used to dwell on it quite a lot. I mean, something that you just mentioned, it was, you internalise it, you think, oh, what went wrong, could have done this. And I think as soon as you do that, every hour that goes by, you're missing an opportunity to actually to change it. And so we've actually got a really good team, and anything, because we get, the difference with tech is in real time you can see something's going wrong. So yeah, we've got a good team that pretty much gets together and says, look, we messed up, how do we change this? And then let's start the process of changing it. And actually, it's really weird scenario. We actually energises the team really, really quickly to get something fixed. And so yeah, I think I've just learned not to not to really worry about it and just not, as long as you put action plans in straight away, it becomes quite a positive thing for the team. It's weird.
And so creating like a plan of action.
Yeah, immediately. Like as soon as you see something happen that's wrong, immediately change it.
So what does it do to the team? Does it give them like hope?
Yeah, no, one, it shows that you're not a complete idiot and you kind of know what you're doing, which is important. But I think it just galvanises the team. So like we're in this together. Here's a problem. Let's figure out a solution to do it, and let's green light that problem. It's as long as you do that really quickly, I don't think you normally have a problem with it.
So Ben, can I also say I forgot to mention one of the things that helps me a lot when I do fail is I do have a lot of great people around me as well. They're not necessarily members of my team, they're other people that are entrepreneurial or following their own dreams, and being able to talk to them about what I'm going through or my thoughts and so on and so forth, they kind of give their own perspective on it, and that helps a lot in terms of keeping you motivated and going forward.
You're not going to be positive every day of the year, and it's just, it doesn't happen. We're all human beings, and some member of the team will stand up and say, let's do this, and then everyone will say, okay, yeah. And I think that's really important if you're doing something quite novel, that you surround yourself with positive people. And again, that's probably quite a British thing. I think it's, there's, not to say we're a negative country, but it's really important that you do find people who believe in you and are as positive as you, or it's not going to work.
Oh, this is pretty amazing. Okay, Sue, quickly, what do you do when you fail?
I think it is very much about acknowledging that you've failed. I never used to think I could possibly fail. But I know now that actually I don't know everything. And I think acknowledging that you don't know everything and that you need people around you, and you need to have good people around you that inspire you, and you need to inspire them so that they can come up with solutions as well. And it's great. I've got a fantastic team who work for me. We have a laugh. You've got to have a laugh. And when things do go wrong, it is about how you address that. And if you just start shouting around the place, you're not going to get anywhere. And actually laughing about it sometimes is the right thing to do, and finding the solution and working as a team and not just thinking that you know everything, because none of us do. And you've got to learn. You're learning every day. I've learnt so much today. It's been great listening to everybody and inspiring.
I fully agree. Now, Sue, quickly, please tell the audience just how much the company now turn over.
The company now turns over 2 million.
2 million? Really?
2 million.
I had no idea.
And we make about 300,000 profit every year, and we've been growing year on year throughout the recession. So I'm really looking forward to it now when it's when the economy takes off.
Okay, and with that, we now have time for quick questions and answers. So let me tell you how it works. You ask questions and they will answer. So, we need a spare mic. Okay, guys, we only have 3 mics. Thank you for volunteering, Claude. Okay, now who has a question? Gentleman at the back. Yes, it is.
I wondered if you'd done anything to proactively look for failure in your organisations or in your operations, in the sense of catching it early, catching it small, and catching failure before it becomes abject.
I think in any business, you're always looking at what's going on around the company. I do keep a close eye on the financial side of things because of where the company was when I took it over. And I think it is important for any owner of a business to know where the finances sit. Because if you do it on a regular basis, you can spot when things, as you grow, it's harder to know exactly what is happening in a company. But looking at the finances will give you an indication of if there are problems, and then you can address them quickly, which is obviously really important in any business.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, we do probations with staff for everyone who comes on board. So I think when you're quite a small team, it's really important that your first kind of 5 to 10 hires set the culture for the whole business for forever. So we always have sort of probation periods in terms of highlighting a problem. getting someone on board and then realizing a problem afterwards is it can be quite a problem. And with tech, you have staging sites where you put stuff live, you do as much testing as you can, just to say, look, it's quite reckless to do things quite gung-ho, just pushing stuff live. So yeah, there's certain procedures that you can put in place, and as we've matured as a business, we've got a little bit better at that. So yeah, I mean, the first one was the cultural fit and making sure that anyone you bring in is on the same wavelength as you, because it's really, really important in early teams.
Yeah, I don't actually push my business to try and fail, but what I do pretty much all the time, I try to do at least once a week, is try to push myself to fail personally at something. So I try and take on something that I don't think that I'll actually be able to do or not, or a new project or something like that. Cause I try to make sure that I'm growing personally as an individual, because I know kind of when you are leading a project or when you're leading a business, basically the capacity of that business or that project is how big your capacity is as an individual. So I try to make sure that I'm constantly growing so that I'm not putting a limit on the potential of my businesses.
Okay, next question. Okay, we're gonna do nice and quick. We're gonna do a quick question, quick answers, so we're gonna get as many questions as possible. Quick question.
How do you deal with people doubting you? Like when people say like they will never work. I mean, do you sort of like ignore? I don't care about you, or just? But how do you do that though? I mean, it's like there must be like loads of people saying, like say 10 people saying to you that's not gonna work. How do you sort of ignore all of them, even though like
I'll give you many examples. So Google, for example, the first 10 VCs that saw Google all thought it would fail. It's just something you just got used to. You're not going to be on the same wavelength as everyone on the planet. If you're committed enough to something, you might have to pivot and adjust things to make sure it works. But if you've, in your heart of heart, you know it's going to work, then it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. They're not involved in it every day, so ignore it.
I agree. Just, be passionate, believe in what you believe in, and just go for it.
I agree.
Very poignant words. Next quick question. You there.
You mentioned women, not many of them around. Do you think women fear failure more than men? And if so, how do we stop that happening?
I don't know whether women fear failure more than men. I mean, I think at my age, yes, failure was, it was a no-no when I was younger, and through the education system and all the rest of it. I think there is, there's obviously the biological difference. We have babies. As I said earlier, I took 10 years out to have my kids, and for me, that was the best thing that I could have done. I loved those 10 years. But I'm also a very ambitious person. I always wanted my own company, and I was fortunate enough to be able to succeed in that. And I think it is about following your heart, following your goals. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you put your passion in it. You don't have to run a business to be happy. It's only those people that really want to do it. So it doesn't matter. You just go for what you want and be happy. And I think, the media in this country does need to change, because it is very negative. And actually, as human beings, we don't want the negativity. We want the positive. We want the happy stories. And that's always a challenge for me in public relations, trying to get them to print the good stuff.
That's impossible. Claude?
This doesn't necessarily just apply to females, it is for guys and girls. But one quote that I always try to remember is, your fear of looking stupid is holding you back. So sometimes we just need to forget what other people think about us and just go for it.
I mean, I think case studies are important as well. So it's in the UK, sort of finding who are the women, who are the champions who have got there and done it, and highlight the hell out of them, because it shows a path is possible. And we're only really starting to do that with male entrepreneurs. And I think if the media, again, it's down to the media as well. I think it's the entrepreneurs in North America are championed a lot more than they are here, and it needs a few case studies.
And I think as well, the fact that I did take 10 years out where I wasn't working. I was literally at home raising my children, and with going back to work in 2001, I became managing director within a couple of years. So it is possible if you want it. So we do need to just make people aware that if you want it badly enough, you can make it happen.
I love that, and just give it a go. Next question, please. You over there.
Is it easier to pick yourself from a failure hole, or is it harder to acknowledge that you fell in the first place?
I think it's hard to acknowledge. I know I always struggled earlier on about failing at things because I don't like failing. But now, hindsight, actually failing is good because it does teach you a lot, which if you don't fail, you'll never push yourself to other areas to have a go at. So it is important.
Yeah, it's the best type of feedback there is in failing. So we've put a lot of effort doing it this way. Okay, that didn't work. Let's shift quickly over here. And yeah, I think it's just think of it as a big feedback loop. And the more failure you have, the more feedback you're getting to make whatever you're doing better.
Once again, I agree.
And guys, I'd like to thank the panelists. They'll be available after to answer some questions. Sue Bailey with the company now turns over £2 million. And we also have Peter, whose app has over 1 million unique visitors. And we have Claude, who hosts an event called Dream Nation, which is quite similar to this. If you want to find them all, just find them after the panel show. And please give them a big round of applause. And also, you get a big present from Failure Day. A little pie boy Loughborough beanie. Please, another round of applause to the beanies.